Bam.
Yo, what's going on?
What's up, people?
So I gotta ask you a question. How often do you think of Rome or the Roman Empire?
So this has actually been going around a lot. So
Well,
I've actually kind of thought about this question. I think at a minimum once a week. At the maximum every other day, probably.
I'd say once a week.
The question is
Recently,
recently.
it's been every day.
Why is that?
Partly because of this podcast, but it's partly because of that trend. You really
Right.
start thinking about it. It starts wrapping in, and I saw the trend, and then you just like I don't know. Like I remember I was watching a video on it because then I started watching
Turn your mic just like a little bit tilted towards you
yeah. So I started watching some videos on it, and it
and lift it up a little.
definitely got super. I got engulfed in the.
In the trend.
Yeah, exactly. And it was interesting.
It is
It
super.
was kind of fun.
I thought I would, to be honest with you, I thought I was like the only one.
Mm.
I thought I didn't like. I always knew that I kind of thought about history and stuff like that a lot, but once the trend came out, I was like, man, I ain't the only one. Like, there's a lot of people who like think about this all the time, and then I started asking myself, I'm like, okay, like why? Why are these people thinking about this all the time? And I think it's innate in men,
I'd agree.
but it's like, what are the reasons why it's innate in men? And that's what's super interesting to me.
Yeah. Why? What do you got? Give me one.
Well, number one, war is just interesting.
That's what I told my wife too.
Like it's just so I think that men, most men, not I won't say like every single man, but most men want to compete. Like there's that competitiveness to all men, and you see that play out in so many parts, like in our own culture now. Like boxing and jujitsu are really big. Sports are really big. Video games are really big, and if you look at all that, all it is men like competing against each other. Well,
Well, it's conquest too.
yeah, and then the ultimate tests are like, so there's like tag, right? Let's just go down like sports. There's like tag, and then there's like soccer, and then there's like football, and you keep going up the level of like difficulty or the level of like,
Competitiveness.
yeah, and I'm not trying to say like one sport is way more competitive than the other, but you get all the way up, and the ultimate, what's the word I'm looking for? The ultimate test of that is warfare.
What do you
It's
mean? Like some type of championship?
No, so what I'm saying is, like if you wanted to, the it's like if you lose a sports game, you just win or lose, and then you go home. War is like the ultimate competition because some people don't go home, and I think that extreme amount of like pitting one against the other, man against man, like to the death. I'm not saying that like people are super interested in it because people die, but it's when we see it, when we listen to stories, or we read about it, or we watch these videos or whatever, it's like it's the ultimate test of like manhood. It's the ultimate test of like, wow, like those guys sacrificed, or wow, I can't believe that they were able to endure that.
You know what wowed me was the strategy behind a lot of it. That was interesting.
Strategy behind what exactly?
Like the wars on how the strategy behind it, and like at work I'd be listening to something, and then I'd kind of peek down at my phone when I'd stop driving or something like that, and they'd have like all the animations on how like the battle worked out and stuff. Yeah, it was neat. And it was like when they would flank or something, and then what that would do would split the army, and it would make like a V, and then they would attack in the middle of it, or whatever, like anything to. And it was all like how to break the line or to get an edge. There was a lot that went into that, and then what the other part that was super interesting around the whole war thing was how they would recruit the people, or legions,
Yeah.
or warriors. I don't.
You know what a legion is?
I don't. What was
Okay.
it?
I'm going to look it up and figure out exactly what it is,
Yeah.
just to put it on screen.
Right. And so that was very interesting. And and I'm trying to think. I don't remember what some of the battles were. I couldn't remember, but there was a lot of them, and it was pretty much the whole span of the whole Roman Empire. It's peace and war, and then it's some type of conquest to make your borders bigger, acquire more land, and then I think what they would do is they would split it into you have like the city, and on the outskirts of the city was the provinces, and I'm assuming they would maybe conquer that area, and you can't really have full control over it, but I think it's pretty much like, hey, we conquered you, we own you, now you can stay living, but you just have to pay like a tax to the capital or something like that. And their expansion was massive.
Yeah, like it was a full. Well, the history of Rome is number one, just interesting how it happened, the players, the stories, the drama. Like it is all very
The
interesting.
philosophy was neat. I didn't dive into that. What did you, when you dove into it, did you get into the philosophy aspect of
Yeah,
it?
so
And
like,
the politics. I know that's probably your two.
well, so the politics is really interesting because our system in America is partially based off like a Roman Republic, and the Greek side of things, the Greek democracy. I think that's correct, historical. But like I've been reading this book. Crap, I should really go grab it. But it's the philosophy in it, and it's letters, and
Is it Meditations?
no, it's not the Meditations of Marcus Aurelius.
Yeah.
I think it's not that book. It's a different one, but just it is so dense. And I'm reading it and I'm like, it's super cool, like interesting for me to think like, like someone wrote this 2,000 years ago or
Yeah.
1,500 years ago
Yeah,
or, 2,200 years ago. Somebody wrote this down and I'm reading it right now. Like,
It was preserved.
That
was,
is
that was
super
neat for me too.
interesting.
Yeah.
but it's just I'm gonna go grab the book. So you're gonna have to entertain them. Read them what the Roman Legion is.
All right. So this is the Roman Legion, the largest military unit of the Roman army, comprised. I can't see it. Infantry and something, the cavalry in the period of the Roman Republic. Okay, wait. So right here. Oh, it doesn't really. That's like. I don't know. I kind of butchered it, but I can't overly see it from here.
Where were you at?
I was at the first paragraph, but I was more.
Largest military unit of the Roman army.
Yeah, but
Kinds of.
I'm looking for the specifics of what the word legion was.
Look it up on your phone.
Yeah, I don't know. Anyways, here the. What are you doing?
Jocko makes his debut. Jocko, come here. Come on.
So what do you got?
So I'm not even sure if this is a Roman book, but it's oh shoot, I'm gonna butcher this name. Do you know how to pronounce that?
Lucius Seneca.
Yeah, Lucius Seneca, Letters from a Stoic. And it reads not like a traditional book, like straight through. It's like letters.
Mm-hmm. So what? You can skip around
You
if
can
you
kind of
want.
like skip around if you want. So I'll kind of give you like some of the contents. True and false friendship, the philosopher's mean, on sharing knowledge, on crowds, philosophy and friendship, old age, philosophy, the guide of life, festivals and fasting, old age and death.
Well, I think you know what's interesting about this is I wonder if all the past, all the philosophy that has yet been discovered, or at least written down on paper, it's like they got it all down, and then, or they had been learning it. Everyone's been learning it. It's been a thing. It's always here. It's been on this earth, and then they just started to put it down into words, and it's like that was the very beginning of it all. And it's almost like, and the kind of what I'm trying to say is, do you think almost as of now, it's like stuff is watered down because it's just kind of been retold and retold, shortened, and
I think that some stuff is watered down. And I think that I think it's super interesting to us, like as far as the philosophy goes, I think it's really interesting to us because we're kind of like missing that in our culture a little bit now. Like it's kind of like been pushed out to the edge. And now with the internet and stuff getting popular, there's a lot more people really digging into it. And I think it's kind of helping people, but I think it's because it's a lost like art a little bit. And I think it's making a comeback because people are so, desperate for having meaning and stuff in their lives.
I think we're going from a period of entertainment back into education. Is what's happening.
Dude, I think that's actually a super interesting thought.
I had that thought, and I'm wondering if that's why this stuff is starting to become a trend again. And I don't even know. It was a joke, but then a lot of those, whatever it was, TikTok or something, started off as the significant others, the women asking the men. It's like, is it really just a joke, or is there actually some truth to that?
So if anybody ever reads this book, Wild at Heart by John Eldredge, we've talked about this before, and we're going to do I want to do a whole book study on this. But so this book talks about like what it is to be a man. And so there's a couple of different chapters and seasons and stuff. So I'm going to just read these real quick. And this is like a study guide book. It's not the actual book, but just listen. The heart of a man, the poser, the wound, the battle, the beauty, the adventure. When you think about the Roman Empire, it has all of that in it. Mm-hmm. The heart of a man, that's the philosophy, the poser, I don't know how he talks about that in this book. I can't remember, but the phony, the fake. But the wound, you see battles being lost and won. You see politicians, or leaders or Caesars being assassinated. You see people being killed. So there's this big cultural stuff, and then happening even and then at that time. Mm-hmm. You have the battles, the strategic way they put out their forces, all the technology, because the Romans they knew what they were doing. Their technology is super interesting.
Well, that's how they capitalized on getting so big.
Yeah.
It was the works of the aqueducts and
and if you have like a mechanical mindset or anything like that, so you can just dig into that stuff forever. The beauty, so like there's drama, there's the Romans they had like they're very artistic too. They had the games, they had their dress, and then you have the adventure. So not only did they just have all this stuff like in their own little city, like they adventured out. So there's all these like things of like what it kind of means to be a man. And when you think about the Roman Empire, it has all those attributes to it. And that's what I think is really gripping, because if you're a person who likes history, obviously you'd be into it. But if you're a person who likes warfare and tactics, you can be into it. If you're a person who likes technology and buildings and architecture, you can be into it. If you're a person who's interested in philosophy, you can be interested in it. If you're a person who likes drama and stuff like that, and you can be into it. So there's all these different avenues for different men. And then obviously what usually happens is like, oh, I like warfare. And so you read about the Roman legions and you read about the battles, but then you get pieces of the philosophy in there and you're like, oh, let me dig into that some more.
Yeah.
It's very, there's a lot of depth to it.
Well, yes. So the one thing that I actually, believe it or not, which is a crucial part, kind of shifting gears a little bit here, back to the aqueducts. So I had heard the thing that I had kind of either heard and or discovered, I suppose it's self-explanatory, was water is life. So what they did was they brought the water to them through the works of the aqueducts, and how they did it was super gradual. You start high, it comes low, you bring it into the city or whatever. And I can't remember where now, but what they did is they stored it underground. And then I think they built the city over top. So they had a massive storage of water underneath.
Dang, that's crazy.
And I don't know if it's like still standing or if it was real pictures or like generated pictures, but there's massive columns all underneath. It's pretty legit looking.
There's still aqueducts that you can find.
Yeah. Yeah. You can. I think there's a place where you can like stand on them and stuff.
Yeah, dude. Oh, it's so. And then we know a lot of people who do concrete. So there's like the Roman concrete. Like I remember I just saw an article the other day. I read it and it was like, scientists have finally started to figure out what Roman concrete is and what it consists of because it was so strong.
Yeah, they utilized a different, some type of different sediment, limestone or something like that, because it's it's like water, aggregate, maybe something else, but they used something different, which was way more robust. It was a different type than what everyone else was doing. So I think the buildings were a lot stronger. And then through the architecture that they did, which is right here, arches, the works.
Look at that.
Yeah. So the works of the archways were actually, wait, these are the aqueducts, right?
Yeah, these are the aqueducts.
Yeah. Okay. So they found that I think using the use of arches was a way to strengthen your aqueducts, and it was maybe less material
It's
as
less
well.
material and it's strong.
Yeah. And what it does,
I'm pretty sure in architecture the arch is like the strongest.
yeah. Do you know why?
It has something to do with the forces. I learned all about it in school, but now you're asking me. And I
Yeah.
can't
No,
remember.
I mean that's what I was looking for. I think it disperses the weight or the.
It disperses the
It's
rate
a downward force or something.
Yeah, and then the arch disperses away. It's something like that.
Yeah.
But it's just super. Look at this pipe, hey.
Yeah, no, it's insane. Like imagine building that with stinking pickaxes and shovels and
I know, that's crazy.
man labor.
But it's just so awesome
Yeah, it was
to see
neat.
what they could do like so many years ago. And then the other thing that I think is really interesting about all of it is there are a lot of comparisons between like the U.S. state of the nation, the culture, and all that, like our U.S. empire and then the Roman Empire, because empires rise and fall, and a lot of people think the U.S. is on a decline, and stuff like that. And so that's super interesting to think about too. And I've seen that poised many times. Like,
I'm thinking why they fell. It fell from within,
yeah,
right? It was conflict from within, is what it
Yeah.
was.
I haven't studied up on the fall of. I've have before in the past, but on the
Well,
top of
it's
my
a
mind,
debate. It's like one of those highly debated topics.
Yeah.
It's like, oh no, it was because of this reason or this reason,
but that's what kind of led to the Dark Ages too.
which was
From like 800,
no. What led to the Dark Ages? The fall of
the fall of the Roman Empire, because the
Interesting.
Roman Empire was like stability for the region. Good or bad or whatever. It was stability, and once all that fell,
It allowed everyone else to come up.
yeah, there's nobody ruling. So it was like all these different tribes, clans, cities, governments all popping up. And that's where the British Empire comes from, because Rome was all the way up into England.
Yeah. I read
They
that.
had like posts up there and stuff. I think I watched a movie about that not too long ago. It was kind of like a budget film, but it's super interesting the way that fell, and it took how many years until the Enlightenment? Like 1500s. So it took almost like
It was like into the 500 BC, AD.
it was like 500 or 600 AD, I think, when the Roman Empire fell. And you go from 500 AD,
Maybe 560 to be specific.
560,
Something
it was something in that region,
Yeah.
all the way to the 1400s or 1300s.
Who? Not the Roman.
No, the Roman Empire fell,
Right. Okay. I see
and then
what
the
you're saying.
Dark Ages lasted
Yes.
hundreds of years after that. And it's pretty crazy to think that one empire falling caused that many years of you almost got sent backwards in time.
Yeah.
'Cause there's all this stability.
Well, you know what's funny is you always, when you learn about the Dark Ages, you learn about how dirty and nasty it was. The Roman Empire was very clean. So when a new emperor would come up, like they would take on some type of building, is what they would do. They would build something, and what a ton of them build was communal baths, massive bathrooms essentially. But it wasn't just like some type of bath. It was like a hangout spot. You'd go and after work, you'd go and shower. You could potentially get a haircut. You would, listen to some type of philosophy. People speaking in that area. It's just like a massive, not compound. What's the word I'm looking for? I don't know. Little like a town center or something.
Like that's like one of them right there.
Yeah, dude, it's insane. And like the Colosseum was something that was built from whatever emperor, and then a lot of them did like I'm gonna build a new aqueduct, and they would get more water running into town. But each new emperor always would almost try and one up the one before, and that was like their role to the society to get favor with the people.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I'm surprised you haven't brought this up yet.
What's that?
I've actually been there.
Yeah. Well, tell me about that. I'm actually interested.
So that was probably like when was that? 2015, 2016.
Has it been that long?
Yeah, it's been that long already. Okay, so my wife's sister is actually going to Rome right now, or within the week, or she's already there.
Oh wow. Okay.
And so me and her were sitting down. We had dinner with my wife's family, and her sister was telling me about it. I'm like, she's a history teacher too. So we kind of goof out on history every time we see each other. And she's like, yeah, I'm going to Rome. What was it like? You've been there, right? And I'm like, yeah. So we started talking about it a lot. And I was like, yeah, I went like 5 years ago. And I started really thinking, I'm like, it's actually been longer than that.
Right. Right.
But it's definitely an old city. Beautiful city, but it's old. And it tells, I remember our tour guide telling us, sometimes the water won't work correctly, or the toilets won't work correctly. But he's like, you have to understand that everything here is built on top of, a 2,000-year-old city. So things act weird. So he goes, if something happens, just notify the front desk, and, they'll help you out. But it was amazing. Like, just, one of the things that I don't think Americans grasp enough is, and not saying that we're like such a new country, because we've been around for a couple hundred years, but the history, just, you can almost like feel it. Like, you're standing in a place where when you're standing in the Colosseum, and you're like, 2,000 years ago there was gladiators fighting right there, like stuff that I've only imagined,
Naval battles and
stuff I've only seen in movies, like that happened right in front of me all this time so long ago. And you see the architecture and the beauty of it, and you're like, how did they do this that long ago? Like, it's to me, and I'm a history person, so to me, I can just soak it all in, and it's really cool. But it was such a cool thing to go, because I mean,
you think it's an experience that everyone has to do at least once.
If you're a guy and you like history, you have to do it.
Yeah.
Like, I've watched Gladiator so many freaking times. It's just,
how big was it in there first?
It wasn't as big as I thought. So, like, it wasn't like a modern day stadium.
Yeah.
But it was still pretty big. I don't know I think it was like 10 to 15,000 people could fit. I could be off on the numbers.
When, that's a lot of people.
Yeah, well, and it was huge too. One of the really kind of tidbits that's super interesting is when we're walking through, there's holes in the wall, like all over the place. And I remember our tour guide telling us later on, in like later generations, one of the Caesars wanted to build something, and they needed like the iron out of the walls. So they would cut holes in the walls and steal the iron out of it.
Yeah.
That's what he said.
I heard that.
Because instead of like going and just getting new stuff way out here at a quarry, they'd just like take it from an old building and move, build it with a new thing.
Yeah, that would happen with the new emperors. Like, that building's kind of crumb, or it's fallen down or something. So they'd go nab it from. Yeah, I heard about that. It's interesting.
But then, and this is more the modern stuff of Rome, but it's a different culture, but it's super cool to experience and walk around in. Like, I don't know if there's any city in the U.S. that I've been to, and I've been to New York and Atlanta, Boston. Boston's pretty cool. Boston is. I like walking around Boston because there is like a history fact there, and a lot of the city is kind of still intact. If you do the duck boat tour, it's really interesting. But even like, I've been to most of the bigger cities on the East Coast, and when you walk through Rome, you can just walk and look at stuff and have a good time. And we walked everywhere too. Like, I think I took one taxi ride.
Well, it's almost like everything has a story too. You just turn your head a little bit, and you're looking at some building that had this purpose or did this thing, or I think you had mentioned one thing I do remember wasn't there like water fountains that you drink from?
Yeah. So, if you guys ever travel to any like place that's not the U.S., like
Europe maybe or something.
Yeah, like most of the places in Europe and stuff, like water is just different there, and a lot of the places you can't really drink the tap water. Some places it's fine, but they're not like. I remember it being kind of difficult to get bottled water, especially in Rome.
Yeah.
And so I remember I kept buying pineapple juice.
Really?
Yeah, like I remember having like two of those like liter jugs, like the cardboard of pineapple juice. I remember there's like a market across the street from where we're staying, and
But
I
like
got that.
the people that live there, do they drink? Is there like they're not like they're like fountains, right?
There's these little like fountains that we'd go to and like fill up our water bottles, and it was super crisp. It had a taste to it, but it was really good. It was cold. I remember that, and like
So that would have been like the old infrastructure of the water coming in.
I'm
Or is
not
it
100% sure. I'm not 100% sure if it's new or old. I mean, I wouldn't suspect it was brand new, but I wouldn't think it's not like 2,000 years old. But I think there are like storages of water like underneath the city, and that's where some of it would come from. But it was super. The culture was super cool. It was very laid back, very. You walk around and eating dinner was like. So I'll just kind of paint you the picture. You go out to eat in America, like for us, we live in South Carolina. You sit there, you go, where do you want to go eat? You know, you and your friends, and you get in the car, you drive to the place, you park, you walk in, and then you eat. And for us, the experience is around sitting at the table and eating and then leaving. And there's no other like experience to that than just sitting at the table and eating the food. And maybe for
So like if you went for a night out, the experience was dinner. And that was like your hangout.
no. Well, yes, but what I'm trying to say is, we walked everywhere. So just walking. So we went to. I remember one of the nights we went out to eat. We went to a courtyard. So you're like walking down an alley, and it opens up into this. You know, it's like looks almost like a back alley. Cobblestone streets is darker out. Beautiful buildings, beautiful architecture. Walking down this alley, the alley opens up to a massive like cobblestone courtyard. There's a big fountain in the middle, and all around the courtyard is different restaurants. So just for us to, it's kind of like you walk into like the secret club of like the back room of like a bar or something
Right,
like that. That was like the alleyway. And so you're like walking through this tight alleyway, and then boom, it opens up into this beautiful courtyard, water fountain, and restaurants, people sitting outside. So just walking from our hotel to the courtyard is an experience. And then there's all these restaurants all right there. And so you walk to each one, you look at the menu, like, oh man, I might want this, but I'm going to go over here and check this out. And there's like hostesses outside, I can't remember if they did this in Rome, but like possibly like trying to offer you deals.
Yeah.
And you can like barter with them. So you go to the next one, you see what they have on their menu. And I remember it was me and Ryan. We went and we picked one. I still remember, if I could find this courtyard, I would love to. But I remember there's the courtyard. We walked in from over here, and then the place we ate was like on a little porch kind of area.
Right.
And I got calamari. That was the first time I ever had calamari.
How
It was
did
like
they-
calamari pasta. It was really good. And
How do you order? Do they speak English?
yeah, most of the places everyone speaks English, and especially because tourism and stuff. But then they come to you. They offer you everything. They offer you water, wine, your food. They offer you dessert, and eating there is also a whole different experience. It's not eat, pay, leave. It's eat, relax, conversate, and it's not like get you your food as fast as possible. Get you in and get you out. It's sit down, talk to the people that you're with. Have a little bit of wine. Then your food comes or your salad comes. You eat that, and then you lean back and you rest. And then they bring out your main dish. You eat that, and then you rest and you conversate and you talk, because the city. I remember in Rome, it really doesn't like come alive until like 10, 11, 12 o'clock. So a lot of people will eat dinner until like 10 o'clock at night.
Huh.
And so then one of the other cool things there too is like you have to ask for your check. They won't just bring it to you because they don't want to bother you. They want you to sit and experience and conversate and have fun. And so that was just so that's a whole different experience in itself. And then you leave and then you go out and then you're walking around and it's the nightlife and you're walking around through the city. So it wasn't just get in the car or get in the tour bus, you drive, pull up, get out.
Yeah, right.
It was like this whole experience of traveling to there, walking around the courtyard, looking at all the different restaurants, picking out what you want to eat, figure out what all the specials are, sitting down, eating, having this beautiful experience, great food. Obviously, is Rome. And then, you leave, you go hang out by the fountain, you meet back up with some of the people that you're with, and you're sitting there chit chatting with them. And you get, then we get the group together and like, hey, we're thinking about going here. And then, all right, let's go there. It's a 20-minute walk. So you're walking through the city. So the whole nightlife is this whole experience compared to like American culture. It's drive here, stop, eat, then go here, then do X thing, and then leave, go home. To whereas there, it's this whole like adventure almost. That was amazing. Another thing that I really want to talk about too is I heard this on Tucker Carlson, and I probably should look up the clip, but it would probably be too long. But Tucker Carlson was talking to Russell Brand.
Yeah.
I think I showed this to you. And he's talking about there's in some of these other cultures, like their architecture, like it's beautiful. And when it's beautiful, you know that it means something. It means something to the people who at least built it. And you can take somebody from a totally different culture and bring them to another culture and say, look at this architecture. And they're going to go, wow, that's beautiful.
Right.
And then when you come to certain parts of America, it's like big, massive fast food signs, telephone wires, and it just kind of looks dirty and grummy. And when you're at those places like Rome or Paris, there's just a beauty to the architecture.
Well, it's old is what it is.
Yeah, and
we don't have the luxury of that yet. You know what I'm saying?
Well, yeah, and some cities just smell bad, and that's just kind of a thing. But it was amazing, and there's stonework everywhere and stuff.
That's that would be so interesting.
The Trevi Fountain too, dude. Have you ever seen pictures of that? Oh my gosh.
So what is it, like some massive fountain?
Yeah, it's spectacular. Like, I can't believe you've never seen this. It's
So what's the building or the buildings?
Dude, I can't, to be honest with you, it was so long ago I can't really remember what it is, but it's this amazing fountain with all this stonework, and the building's amazing.
Look at that. It reopens after a $2.4 million renovation.
I was there during the renovation.
Crust.
There's no water, and there's plexiglass around it, and it was still beautiful. So we went here, and it was beautiful. And I really loved it, even though it was under construction when I was there. Oh, and then the statues too. Like there's statues and everywhere of their history. I mean, you look at this.
Ours get ripped down. Shame.
Yeah. And it's amazing. Like, can you imagine if on your walk to work every day, that's what you walked by?
No, I know.
Like you could walk by that 100 times and you would still stop and look at it.
I don't know. I'm sure they keep walking.
There's a lot of tourists there, so people who live there probably avoid it. But I think there's so many things for us, I guess places to go, things to see, and we go there and we look at them. It's like, oh yeah, I saw that. And it's kind of not that great. But here you could go and just look at it.
You're right.
So many, and you go back and look at it again. It is so awesome.
How old is it? Do you remember or no?
I do not remember. I remember there was a story about one of the windows up top.
Yeah.
But I can't remember why. Something about some girl hanging out of it or something like that. But I can't remember what it was.
Well, that there is a story of I think it's Paul, because he was alive in the early days.
Paul from
the Bible.
Yep.
The Apostle Paul.
Mm-hmm.
So the story with that, it's actually a window story as well, and I wonder if it's the same story. I have no idea, though. I could very well be wrong on the area. But there's a story that he was doing a sermon in his earlier times of becoming an apostle. He might not even have technically had the title. He might have still been Saul at the time. Right? That was his
Yes, Saul.
I think
became
so.
Paul.
So anyways, the story is that he was sang a sermon, and everyone was just hanging out listening. And then I think there was a kid in a window, and he fell and died.
That might have been the story.
I think that, I mean, I don't know, but it sounds like it could very well be the story. And I dove in. It was actually because of my wife. I had done a touch in the past, but she told me to listen up on Paul because he was alive in the Roman times. So I did, and that was one of the stories that I'd heard, and that was interesting.
And I think, like, not to take this into a whole different direction, but I think the Roman history, Roman culture being super interesting for us, like as Christians too, is because the Romans crucified Jesus, and that's, that has all of its own.
Well, that was in that time was the Romans were facing. It was Nero. He's a known figure. Like people don't debate that Nero was alive, but then yet you get a debate that Jesus is real or not, or he's not. He's just a figure, or he wasn't the Son of God. Right. And
by the way, if you are interested in looking into that and you don't believe Jesus was a real historical figure, look at the work of Gary Habermas. He's a professor at Liberty University. Really, really good stuff on the resurrection and the historical figure of Jesus. Really interesting. And the book, The Case for Christ. Really cool.
Yeah. So Nero would, he would persecute the Christians, and the reason why he did that is because there was a massive uprising in the Christian faith, and it was all because of these early movements, and it started to get bigger and bigger. So Nero strung the Christians up on stakes, burnt them alive as martyrs and whatnot. There's a story of, so they would take the Christians, they would arrest them or whatever, then they'd bring them to the Colosseum. So what they did, they had lions there, and they would just send, like, it was almost like a tribute, like that was like their part of the fun. They would send the Christians out there, and the lions would come up and eat them. Well, it didn't work in their favor, and there's two reasons why. Because one, if the lion did eat them, the stories that are recorded were that the Christians would have peace. Like the spectators would be watching, and it's like you should be running and screaming for your life, but they'd sit there as a martyr and die, and that was a big thing. And then I think there was, I could be wrong, but I think there's one recorded letter somewhere. It might even have been a poet, is what it was. It might have been a piece of poetry, and it was about a Christian who was sent out into the Colosseum, and they sent up a lion. And obviously with the lions, they starved them. So that when they came out, they were coming out to kill and eat. And that was a part of the entertainment. There was a story of a lion coming up, laying on its back, like, here, rub my belly.
Really?
Yeah. And I thought, when I started hearing that was like super crazy to me. That was like probably one of the most interesting things I'd listened to.
That's super cool.
Because it gives like, it gives you a sense of like a time frame that like, hey, these things did happen. We have it in history, and that was really, really, really neat.
Yeah, just everything surrounding it is. I mean, it's a rabbit hole that you could go down and never come out of. And I think that's one of the super cool, interesting things just about Rome in general too. There's modern tourism about Rome because you can still go there.
Right.
There's the historical stuff. There's the battles and the wars. And there's the poets, the philosophers. It's just, you could go down the rabbit hole forever.
Well, and that was like, so with Paul in the Roman times, so I had listened to hours of stuff on Rome. And then when I got to the stuff on Paul in the Roman times, that was, I could have stayed there for hours and listened. And it's kind of what you're saying. Just everything around it is just very interesting.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
Yeah, so neat to listen to.
And I think there's just so many parallels into modern culture too, and empires and people not liking who's ruling them, and you get a good ruler and a bad ruler, and
the revolt of the people to keep the emperor honest. That's what the Senate and the people are for. And it's like now that's what the democracy is. Or
we have a democratic republic.
Right. And so that was neat.
What are some things? So I think another thing that's always just stuck out to me is like the way that the Romans, like their tactics in battle, particularly like the shield walls and their swords and stuff like that. And then
The
obviously
ballista.
the
That was
ballista.
neat. Massive crossbow.
That is so cool. And like the way that they were able to bring strategy to warfare, like it's just super interesting. Like they're going up against a lot of barbarians, a lot of people just charging.
The Huns.
Yeah. And they had like strategy to them. And that was like, I think was more or less unheard of in their time. Now obviously, they probably learned some from the Greeks and stuff like that.
Right.
Came before them, or a little bit before them. But it's also interesting. One of the things I was just getting into, I can't remember where I heard it, but there's like the story. You should look into this, the story of like Julius Caesar and Cleopatra. The whole story behind that is super interesting.
I feel like I have. But I don't remember.
I
Maybe I just saw a title somewhere or something.
It was like the Roman Empire reached all the way to the Egyptians too, and Cleopatra was an Egyptian, a ruler, and supposedly she killed her brother, and then she fell in love with Julius Caesar, and then they had a kid, but she couldn't live in Rome with him, so they had like a house just outside of Rome, and all this really interesting stuff. It's just, and then she was supposed to be the most beautiful woman ever,
Right.
so that's intriguing. It's just interesting. You have,
So that was back in like. So then the Egyptians are still.
I mean, there were still people, yeah.
Yeah. But like, well, I guess to be specific, like the Cleopatra. You always hear about Cleopatra. So that was like the same time.
That was the same time.
Interesting.
See, it's like you just go forever on the stories. There's the stories of like I can't remember which Caesar it was, but he had them build like a bridge like across the sea, and he rode over it with his horse to like
They built it in 10 days.
yeah, to say he conquered the sea.
Yep.
And, stuff like that. Like,
Wanted to march across it.
yeah, there's so many interesting things and crazy battles and stuff like that. And I love it. And then obviously, like for me, I'm like kind of a gear queer type person. So to see like, a barbarian with a club or a barbarian with a spear or sword, and then like some deerskin clothing or animal skin clothing, and then you see the Romans with the breastplate, the kilts, the shoes, the sword, the helmet. I've always been intrigued by helmets.
They're all doctored up.
They look cool. It's like it's so cool looking.
There's a sense of like very organized,
Which goes into
ahead of their time.
one of the things like we've talked about in some of our men's groups that we've done about warriors and fashion and stuff like that. Like they looked good.
Well, they were super fashionable. That was that was one of their things.
And that's even a whole thing you can get into. That's super interesting.
Yeah, and I think this may even almost have to be a part 2 or something.
I was to dig in more. I love history. I want to do more stuff on history.
Maybe you guys could let us know too. If it's super interesting or something.
I'm a super history buff, so I love like digging into it. And then the other thing that you hear all the time is like, history doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes. So you're able to make all these connections and stuff. And I if you're a dude and you haven't dug into it, I would definitely like dig into it more, because it's so fascinating. I just heard on a weightlifting podcast I was listening to, one of the guys, he's actually reading what's the book we talked about earlier, the Marcus Aurelius
The
book.
Meditations.
Yeah, the Meditations of Marcus Aurelius. He said he's reading that and like following it, and he said he loved it.
Yeah,
and I'm like, crap, maybe I should buy that too.
I did.
And you did?
Yeah. I didn't finish it though.
Well, give us some clips from it.
When I say I did, I mean I got through like the first chapter.
What was the first chapter about?
I couldn't even remember.
When did you get it?
A while ago.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I've had it. It's like way up there. I got it on Audible. It's like wicked best time seller or something.
Yeah, I need to get that and just read it.
Yeah, maybe I should try and go back to it. I just remember it was almost like hard to listen to.
Yeah,
And I wonder if it's because it's like your book. It's not so much like a storyline. It's more just like a bunch of, I don't know, wisdom put together into one
I'm trying to find like an example of like.
It's got to be though, because they probably wrote on scrolls or something.
Like right here, like I'll just read like a little excerpt. But if you consider any man a friend whom you do not trust yourself, then you are mightily mistaken, and you do not sufficiently understand what true friendship means. Like, dude,
Are they almost quotes?
yeah, like kind of, they're just like little tidbits on different
Yeah.
stuff. And he's like talking about friends, and like it's deep. And like I was reading it, and it doesn't read like there's not a lot of fluff in it. There's Mackenzie's been saying that about novels and
Yeah.
stuff. There's not a lot of fluff. It's like all really dense, meaningful things, like in every paragraph and line.
Yeah. I remember Meditations was like, there were people in his life, and like, so I don't know if it was a chapter would start, but it was about, there was like, he would say some individual, someone that he knew personally, and then he would write like stuff about them, and then it would go on to the next person. But I didn't get very far in it, so I wonder if that was like, that alone could have been the first chapter, just all the people in his life who helped him, gave him wisdom, people he looked up to, stuff like that.
There also is, I haven't listened to it in a long time, but I think Dan Carlin did a whole thing on Julius Caesar.
Yeah.
And that was super. I should have went back and listened to that. I can't remember the title of his podcast that he did about them, but that maybe it was the Celtic Holocaust was the name of it. I think because the Celtics or the Celts, I think they were in England, modern day England.
Maybe.
And Rome obviously had outposts and stuff there. And so I think that tied into some of it, if I remember correctly. I might be totally wrong, but I remember he did a whole thing talking a lot about Julius Caesar, and that was super interesting. I'm more like, if I had to like gauge my knowledge on like history, I think World War One would probably be. I probably know the most about World War One.
Or maybe that's the next one we do.
I honestly think World War One is more interesting than World War Two. And that is like, I think that's kind of not normal for people, but after like digging way, way into it and going way down the rabbit hole, I think it is for a couple of different reasons, but we can explain that at a later date.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, what I would say is maybe we can expand on some history topics or something.
Yeah.
That'd be kind of neat.
Yeah, it would be really fun.
History episodes or something.
Anything that any of you guys are interested in, like put it in the comments too, because we're just here to grow and learn and all that stuff too.
Yeah. Every day's a new day to learn. That's
Yeah.
for sure. So
Well,
I don't know. I think we could probably wrap it up here. Hey.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you for listening.
Yeah, please help us get to 1,000 subscribers. We're trying to hit that. If any of you guys listen, please leave a comment, leave a like. We'd love to hear from you. A lot more to come in the future too.
Yeah, for sure.
All right.
Appreciate it, guys.
You guys have an awesome night. Take it easy.